Hello and welcome to the Cinementalist podcast for Cinementalist.com. Sitting to my left is Floki, still in his hibernation state. Sitting opposite me is Liam, and of course my name is Andy. How's it going, dude?
Very good, sir, yes.
Yeah.
Are we sure he's not dead yet then?
Yeah, I had him out last night.
His blood's still pumping? He's
He
still
is.
good?
Yeah, he came out for a little wander.
Good.
I got him out for a bit. He wasn't impressed. I put him back, I offered him some food, and he went back under his little hidey hole and went to sleep again.
Has he ever been impressed?
No, I have to say, actually, not much impressive. Floki. He is the harshest critic on the podcast by some degree.
And his silence is deafening and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. He looks at you sometimes just like, what the fuck is this? And you think, well, sorry, mate. This is existence.
You need to up your ante.
Yeah, this is as good as it gets as well. I mean, everything's taken care of. You don't have to pay rent. You don't have to do any of that shit. No bills, no responsibilities. Just enjoy being a lizard. That's what he has to do.
Well, he doesn't enjoy it, does he? He's a grumpy fucker.
It is a bit like having a teenager, actually, because, he just emerges from his little hidey hole, has a wander about. You offer him some food. He looks at you like you're a dickhead and he goes back to sleep again. So,
But it's unconditional. You got to love him anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fair. To be fair, he sits there. He's not like a nuisance, is he? He just kind of sits there.
He does go through phases of banging against the window.
Oh, this is very true.
Which we've had to contend with while recording quite a few times.
Yeah, that's true. Actually,
if you can hear the odd tap and click, it's often Floki banging against the window for no reason whatsoever. He doesn't want anything. He just wants to bang against the
Only
window.
been a couple of times, though, which is good. Yeah. But yes, this is the Bearded Lizard podcast where we rant and rave about their pros and cons.
Absolutely. Well, it is very close to Halloween for us. This episode will be going out on, I believe, November the 2nd. So Halloween will have already happened for you guys.
Yeah, and like the geniuses that we are, we've decided to do Halloween-oriented stuff this week, after which it would have passed.
Well, yeah.
Because we're very smart.
Well, our production schedule dictates that we miss every holiday, essentially. So it's still Halloween for us. And
well, absolutely, yes.
It's sort of a Halloween-focused episode, and so will be our premium this week.
Indeed.
Although we'll get on to all of that later. But yes, welcome to the Halloween-free podcast. This is the part where we do film news. And especially on like a Halloween-focused podcast, you expect it to be fun and upbeat. But guess what we're going to talk about?
Something that's not either of those things.
Not particularly fun or bouncy, but it's the only major thing that's happened in film news this week, and it seems to have deleted all other film news.
Oh, what you mean Alec Baldwin?
Yes, indeed.
Do we have to?
I guess we're a film podcast, and it's a pretty big deal. So I think we kind of have to, yes. I think very few of you will be unaware of this at this point. It's still sort of a case in progress as well. So I've decided what I'm going to do here is read from the Wikipedia article, essentially, because that's about as middle of the road, down the middle as you're going to get on this. On October 21st, 2021, Alec Baldwin, who is also a producer of the movie Rust, was filming on the set at the Bonanza Creek Ranch in Santa Fe, New Mexico, when he discharged a prop firearm, killing cinematographer Helena Hutchins and injuring director Joel Souza. Immediately after the incident, Hutchins was transported to the University of New Mexico Hospital. Souza was transported by ambulance to Christus St. Vincent. Hutchins later died from her injuries at the hospital. Baldwin was questioned and released without charges filed. According to the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office, they began investigating what type of projectile was discharged and how the event occurred. Souza was released from the hospital the following morning. On October 22nd, Baldwin sent out a tweet expressing his shock and sadness regarding the tragic incident that took the life of Helena Hutchins. He also indicated his full cooperation in the ongoing police investigation regarding the incident. In a sworn affidavit, a detective stated that Baldwin was handed the prop by Assistant Director David Halls rather than by the set's weapon master. Neither Halls nor Baldwin knew it was loaded. Hours before Baldwin fatally shot Hutchins, 7 unionized crew members who were protesting unsafe working conditions were told to leave the set, with the producer threatening to call the police if they did not leave, and they were replaced by non-union members. There was no union prop master present on the set during the incident. Very, very sad, this. Hate to kick off the podcast with it, but it is a huge bit of news, and we should discuss it a little bit. This just seems like a gigantic and extremely tragic fuck-up.
That's precisely what it is, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when you sent me the link about the walk-offs in protest of unsafe working conditions, it's just looked like an article out of a particularly dark week at the Onion.
Yeah.
To me,
yeah.
You know, I mean, so very enraging, that part, but also, yeah, I mean, Alec Baldwin, one thing I have noticed over the web is a few people and rather distastefully, it's in a partisan hackery infantile sort of way, people who lean towards the right side of the aisle have decided to use it to attack Alec Baldwin's left-leaning, left
Yeah, is anyone
leftist political
surprised?
leans, and said like, oh, he should have done this, he should have done that. No, the reason that you have weapons masters, the reasons that firearms used in movies go through umpteen checks is because the actors are not trained to handle firearms.
Yeah, it's worth pointing out he
They-
was handed the gun and told explicitly that it was a cold
Yes.
gun.
You have like your exceptions. I mean, Christopher Walken, who knows how to check for a gun because of a very, very deep personal anxiety about firearms. He's the exception to the rule. 9 times out of 10, a gun that you see in an actor's hand on the screen has been inspected to death by actual professionals. So for people to say Alec Baldwin should have done this, should have done that, you're talking out your arse.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have to say, and this is completely biased on my end, when I first read this story, before I actually read into it, the first thing that sprang to mind is Alec Baldwin's notorious temper. I thought, oh my God, did he have a rant on set, aimed what he thought was a cold gun?
Someone.
Yeah, well, aimed what he thought was a cold gun and it happened to be loaded. But obviously that is not the case. This does seem to, again, be a massively tragic accident. The thing that absolutely blows my mind about this, having been on several film sets and worked in the production industry, is the fact that there was live rounds on set in the first place. What for?
As you say, a monumental fuck up.
The only production that I can think of that needs live rounds on set is when you're filming somewhere where it's like, there's wildlife, there's bears or something you need to look out for, and they're in the hands of security in case someone gets attacked by a wild animal. Otherwise, why the hell would you have live rounds in the first place? I mean, it calls back a very infamous incident, of course, with Brandon Lee, Bruce Lee's son, who was killed on the set of The Crow. In a much more understandable way, in that case, it was a prop gun that had previously fired a round, and the cartridge from that round was stuck in the barrel, unbeknownst to everyone else. So when the blank round was put behind it and the gun was fired, the blank round pushed the cartridge out the barrel. The cartridge acted like a bullet and it killed Brandon Lee. That's a terrible accident, but it's quite understandable, and prop masters are absolutely militant to prevent that from happening again. The fact that it was just a hot gun in general that had a fully fledged cartridge and bullet in it is absolutely unbelievable. I've seen a lot of articles calling for, all firearms from this point onwards to be CGI fakes, rubber guns with CGI post-processing on the top, etc. I mean, personally, I wouldn't like to see that happen because just about every film I've seen do that, it has been very obviously fake. Although I'm sure someone's going to write in and go, actually, this film didn't use that technique and it worked out fine.
Yeah.
Essentially, this is unbelievably rare. Prop masters are amazingly good at their jobs.
Exactly.
And it's a catastrophic fuck up.
In response to people calling for that, it's not that I don't empathise in any way whatsoever with why they're calling for it, but it's nevertheless, hold your horses. This is, as you said, this is a very rarefied incident.
Unbelievably rare, yeah.
There are an innumerable amount of motion pictures that come out every year that have firearms woven into the narrative in one way or another. And this virtually never happens, ever. So to say that every other production must now be penalised via having to use CGI guns and rubber guns, and no, that's not the way to handle it. The way to handle it is to, get better weapons masters for a start.
Absolutely, yeah. It seems to be that Rust was plagued with production issues and using non-union crew members, which is just kind of, there's a whole debate behind that as well about how the ethics behind that. It's worth pointing out as well that Rust's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, has prior form for this sort of thing, unfortunately. She is accused of discharging weapons without warning and infuriating star Nicolas Cage on her previous film. She was the subject of numerous complaints while working on as the armorer on her previous and first ever movie, The Old Way. So Rust is her second ever film. Nicolas Cage, the star of the film, reportedly yelled at her after she fired a gun without warning for the second time, saying, "You just blew my fucking eardrums out." A crew member from The Old Way said she put the cast and crew in several unnecessary and dangerous situations before he reported she should be fired. And in a podcast interview after filming had ended, she said she wasn't sure if she was ready to be the head armorer on a movie set. And she shouldn't have been. And the head armorer on a movie set is one of the most important roles when it comes to safety. I mean, everybody knows why firearms are dangerous. The fact she even allowed one to be on set with a live round in it is unbelievable.
So she's got a track record of insane incompetence.
Well, she's got a track record of 2 films, one of which everybody complained about her dangerous and unsafe behavior. And in the second, somebody was shot and killed. I mean, how did she get to the position of being, I don't know, that has staff walkout and everything.
This is pretty much her career terminus.
And rightly so. You shouldn't be in that position. There are many, many dangerous ways someone can get seriously hurt on any kind of production set. It's all dangerous. From cameras, which are unbelievably heavy, to grip stuff and lighting rigs. There's all a ton of stuff that can kill you very, very easily. There's a reason you go with certified professionals. There's a reason you don't have, when you're dealing with this level again, and dealing with weapons and with firearms, And
again, I know I mentioned before, but I noticed a couple of people mention as some sort of rebuttal in an attempt to place the blame on Baldwin. I have noticed a couple of people cite Christopher Walken as a specific example, but to reiterate, the reason that he checks his guns is because he insists on it and he's learnt what to check for.
Yeah,
because he has a very, very extreme phobia about loaded guns. That's the reason Walken does it. He is a rarity.
When you're handed a gun by a supposedly professional head armorer, prop master, whatever, and you're told it's a cold gun, and you shouldn't have to double check.
Yeah.
There's a very simple rule when you're dealing with firearms is you have to assume that they're loaded unless they've been checked. And as far as he was concerned, it had been checked, and why not? So, no blame on Alec Baldwin as far as we can see on this one. As I said, the story is still under development. It's very, very tragic. It really, really is. But there you go.
It's depressing. And, I hope that if charges of negligence can be brought, I think they fucking well should.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
Anyway, enough of the bummer to start the podcast out with. Let's get on to the fun of what is teaming up to be a Halloween special. Do you want some good news, Liam? Some good film news?
Yes, please.
You'll be happy with this one.
Yes.
You reviewed Dune last week. You liked it very, very much, which is amazing for a book adaptation. It doesn't happen very often.
Nope.
And you said the only bad thing about it was we were going to have to wait a long time for a sequel. Well, you will be pleased to learn that Denis Villeneuve will get to complete his 2-part adaptation of Dune as a sequel has been officially confirmed.
It is, and it's going to be out in 2 years.
Yeah, that's not too bad a turnaround.
I mean, it's in the bag. It's going to happen. So
the filmmaker took a risk. This is from filmnews.co.uk, by the way. The filmmaker took a risk by only following the first part of Frank Herbert's 1965 science fiction novel in his latest movie. But on Tuesday, Villeneuve, Warner Brothers, and Legendary Pictures chiefs announced a follow-up film will hit cinemas on the 20th of October, 2023. I mean, it'll be delayed, but round about then. I just received news from Legendary that we are officially moving forward with Dune Part 2, Villeneuve said in a statement. It was a dream of mine to adapt Frank Herbert's Dune, and I have the fans, the cast, and crew. Legendary and Warner Brothers to thank for supporting this dream. This is only the beginning. The first installment opened to rave reviews in US and UK cinemas last Friday and has already earned more than $220 million, despite the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, and a simultaneous debut on the HBO Max streaming service in the US. So really, what was the fuss about all of that then?
Well, actually, I remember...
Doesn't seem to have stolen any box office.
I was interacting with Rabbit Reviews on Twitter, and because I remember tweeting about you and saying these Warner dickheads need to greenlight a sequel. And mate, he said, I think this is all just a marketing trick. They're going ahead with the sequel for sure. They're just trying to put as many butts in seats as they possibly can. That's not a bad theory, actually.
It's a lovely whistle on sure you just did there. Huh? It's a lovely whistle on sure.
It happens now and again. I don't know why. I haven't weaponized it. I can't just do it, when make people leave me.
If you could do it on command, that'd be great.
If someone's just nattering in my ear and I'm just like, I can't do it then. But
someone's listening to this with their dog in the room and it's now going mental.
Yeah. Sorry, mate.
But yeah, we're getting a Dune sequel, and wouldn't it have been a massive shame? We did talk about it previously. If it just ended up being, hey, it's the best adaptation of Dune, but you only get half the book. Yeah, at least this is going ahead.
Well, I mean, already, and again, I can see where they're coming from. But people who loved this part 1, as I did, loved it very much, and I love the novel that it's based on. People worried about, part 1 was so good, and we're gonna have to wait so long for part 2. What if it doesn't? what if it doesn't hold a candle to it? What if it's not up to scratch? And I think, like, mate, it's Denis Villeneuve. This guy knows exactly what he's doing.
Yeah, I would have been surprised, but then it's got such a track record of bad adaptations. There are certain things that are regarded as being unfilmable.
I think, like, Denis Villeneuve is something of a rabid perfectionist. There's a reason that his films look like they do and flow like they do and immerse the viewer like they do. It's because he is not going to settle for, that was pretty good. He's only going to settle for shit hot. So I think we can safely say that I'll basically eat my hat if part 2 isn't as good, if not better, than the first part.
Yeah, hopefully
to form
so.
one cohesive, brilliant whole. I'm very confident that's going to happen. So just wish it wasn't so far off, but there we go. At least it's happening.
And my last article here, there has been a survey of the UK's favourite horror films.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And I found the results quite surprising, actually. What would you guess would be the UK's favourite horror film?
The UK's favourite horror film?
Now, this is based on how many Google searches it gets from the UK, transposed with its IMDb score. And it's an algorithm-based thing, basically. But this survey has come out and given the ratings.
The Exorcist.
No, much more modern than that, actually. Get Out.
Really?
Apparently is the UK's favourite horror film. Yeah.
Wow, I was way off.
Yeah, I was very, very surprised with this. Coming in second is Scream.
Okay.
Which I can see because that's much more mass market. Really interesting that Get Out got it. Because although Get Out is a fantastic film, it's quite new and it's quite, I wouldn't say niche, but it's not as mainstream as Scream is. Third is The Shining.
So these are the people are actually picking pretty intelligent horrors.
Yeah, it says what we think of our fellow countrymen. But I did assume some Joss would be in here. I mean, the original Scream isn't a bad film.
No, the original Scream is a great satire. It's very funny and it's very smart.
Yeah. In fourth, It, the 2017 version.
Okay, yeah.
And in fifth, Beetlejuice. So those are all really, really solid picks. I mean, in sixth, you get Saw, so it goes down a little bit. Seventh, The Exorcist. Eighth, Psycho. Ninth, The Conjuring. And 10th is Coraline.
So, yeah, for the most part, that's not actually a bad list.
Yeah, it surprised me too. It shows our views on our fellow man.
Contemptuously cynical we are and how we expect the worst.
Apparently, this country has quite good taste in horror films.
Well, I'll be fucked.
Yeah. Well, that's the end of the news this week. We've got the bummer bit past us. We're now on to Halloween stuff. Mine is sort of murder mystery based. So
we're in dark shit territory.
We're always in dark shit territory. Yeah. To be honest, it's always the Halloween podcast for us.
Effectively, it is, yeah.
But Liam has 2 film reviews for us, and he shall commence them thus.
Certainly, sir. Well, given that it's this season, the aforementioned season, there is a big one doing the rounds at the moment. And, it's from a franchise that I adore the inaugural film of. Everything that's followed on from that is I can take or leave personally. But I sat down and I watched Halloween Kills. Now, have you seen the 2018 David Gordon Green Halloween?
I did, yeah.
You did? So, like, for anyone who is unfamiliar with that, the 2018 Halloween, they've essentially retconned it so that everything, all of the film installments after the 1978 Halloween effectively don't exist. Michael Myers has spent 40 years to the day in a psychiatric hospital after being apprehended on Halloween night, 1978. So we're now October 31st, 2018, and he's in a psychiatric ward. And a couple of British journalists show up because they're familiar with, the boogeyman of Haddonfield, and they want to get a glimpse of him, try and coax him into uttering a word. They present him with his mask and they're like, say something, in a very dramatic opening. And eventually Michael escapes and he makes his way back to Haddonfield, Illinois, and Laurie Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, is there. She's now in her early 60s and she's got a daughter and a granddaughter. Very uneasy relationship with her daughter Karen, played by Judy Greer. A bit more of a warmer one with her granddaughter Alison, played by Andy Matichak. And she's now, Laurie Strode is basically a recluse who was traumatized by the events 40 years ago to the point that she's become very, very tough and very hermit-like and has trained herself in the use of all kinds of weaponry because she expects Michael to come back at any point and she's going to be damn well prepared to finish him off. So Michael escapes. He makes his way back to Haddonfield and starts slicing and dicing a few of the residents. And eventually, Laurie catches wind of this and she teams up with her hitherto skeptical friends and family to take on the Shape and try and save the day. So Halloween Kills, I mean, I have to mention it, obviously at the end of the 2018 Halloween, Michael Myers doesn't perish.
Yeah.
Because this is a sequel that immediately follows on from that Halloween. It's taking place on the very same night.
Sure, and I don't think anyone would be expecting Mike Myers to be killed, at least not in a way where he couldn't rise from the dead again.
So yeah, basically, without giving away like sort of massive spoilers about everything that happens in the 2018 Halloween, Michael Myers nearly perishes but doesn't. And so Halloween Kills opens on the very same night after Michael is engaged in some mayhem. Deputy Hawkins from the initial film, played by the wonderful Will Patton, he has been injured by Michael. There's like this whole sort of melee, people running scared because of his rampaging around. There's a bar all the way across town from basically the site where Michael has been fucking people up, where Tommy Doyle, people would remember from the initial 1978 Halloween, Tommy Doyle was he was the little lad that Laurie was babysitting when Michael attempted to attack her. He was played by Paul Rudd in that god-awful Curse of Michael Myers. And here he's played by Anthony Michael Hall as an adult who is with friends in this bar to commemorate the survivors, commemorate and celebrate the survivors of Michael Myers' massacre all those years ago. You know, they're all sitting around, they're having a good time, they're thankful to be alive, but then there's a news broadcast and it's like, oh, people around Haddonfield are being killed, and Tommy Doyle's like, it's Michael, it's gotta be. So then once again the locals all band together, whereas in the first film it was only Laurie and a handful of people. Now it's effectively the entire town who realizes that the boogeyman has come back to Haddonfield, and they have to stop him once and for all. A sentiment that is repeated very often throughout the film in the form of "evil dies tonight." Okay. Saying evil dies tonight. So that's basically the gist.
So it's very straight and to the point in that way.
Very straight and to the point.
The audience knows who Michael Myers is. The town now knows.
Yes.
He's off doing his thing. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what do we say about Halloween Kills? I laughed a lot and I wasn't supposed to. I know this is an unpopular opinion. The 2018 Halloween, I don't like it. And the reason I don't like it is I think a lot of the acting is rubbish. I'm sorry, I love Jamie Lee Curtis. I love her in the first Halloween. I love her in The Fog. I love her in a plethora of films. I think she's really good. I've always been a fan of Jamie Lee Curtis. But in the initial film of this reboot trilogy, everything feels flat, including from her. The dialogue is atrocious. It's not very convincingly delivered either by her. I think Judy Greer's particularly bad. Andy Matichak is probably as Allison, Laurie Strode's granddaughter, is probably the one player who I think you could cite as giving a half-decent performance. Will Patton's essentially useless. All the performances feel very lifeless, and the dialogue is just trite, and for that reason didn't yield any emotional involvement from me. And I found that aspect of the 2018 Halloween to just continue into Halloween Kills. I found it. I found the characterizations, the way a lot of the characters related to one another, I found it quite laughable. I didn't buy it. Evil Dies Tonight just came across as really cheesy and eventually very tiresome. Is it totally without positives? No, there's a lot of really, really impressive kills in this. The violence in Halloween Kills is absurd. Like, Michael really, really fucks people's shit up, probably in gorier ways than he has in any other installment. So if you're a proper slasher gorehound, it will really satisfy your palate for that. It does that very, very well. And there are a few keen moments of suspense that are satisfying in and of themselves. And Michael Myers, he's a silent Hulk who moves around. So I don't really think, the performance of Michael Myers can really be criticised. He's a fucking...
No, I'd imagine it's quite an easy character to play.
He's a big silent dude in a boiler suit and an inside-out William Shatner mask. He doesn't speak. He just breathes and stabs people. As long as you can look like you're doing that convincingly, I think you're pretty much in the safety bracket. But the first Halloween, the first 1978 Halloween, it had a spirit to it. And I think, again, I thought that Jamie Lee Curtis was really good as Laurie Strode in that. And I know a lot of people think that Donald Pleasance's performance as Dr. Loomis is quite mad. But I really like the chemistry they have in that. And it just feels the way that they illuminate the tiny little town of Haddonfield and just the coziness and the familiarity and well-meaning among all the locals that is just tarnished and thrust into this PTSD hellscape by this maniac running around terrorizing everyone. I really, really like the way the first movie did it. And I don't think that any other installment in the franchise has come close to replicating that. And I know that the 2018 one tried hard to do it, but I didn't buy it. And with this follow-up, I buy it even less. I just don't really care what happens. It was just very rote and quite laughable. And they've got a third and apparently final installment to close it next year. Halloween Ends.
Which it won't.
And I'm thinking, well, going off the back of these, it's about fucking time. I'm sorry. Love the first Halloween. I really love the first Halloween. I know, arguably it's a bit dated because it's 1978, but just what it paved the way for and just the ambitiousness of it. I still enjoy watching the 78 Halloween now because that's a film that is predicated on tons of build-up, that's the kind of horror movie I like. That's why, yes, it's considered like sort of one of the godfathers of the slasher movie, but it's very, very distinguishable from most slasher films because it takes a long time to get there. It's mostly built on menace and mounting dread, which is exactly the way I like to see things done. Whereas most other Halloweens, it's just like slash rip from the get-go, just with more and more, with exponential contrivance. And yeah, it's kind of funny, Halloween Kills. But other than that, it's not really worth a watch. It's not going to surprise you. It desperately tries to emotionally involve the viewer. I didn't find that convincing at all. And I couldn't care less about it, to be honest with you.
No, fair enough. Halloween Kills, bit of a bust.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And what's next this week, dude?
Well, then I sat down and watched something that I have been excited for a considerable while, and you actually did a piece on this in the news not too long ago. This is by Julia Ducournau, the director of Raw, which is a crazy little Belgian horror that I loved very much. And this is Titane, which is the French word for titanium.
Caused quite a stir at the Cannes Film Festival.
Yeah, there were several people who stood up and gave it however many minute standing ovation, and I think there were people who stormed out in disgust before the credits had even rolled.
Always a good one at Cannes, yeah.
Quite telling, yeah. And a lot of people have said, definitely the most shocking film of 2021. And so let's do, this is going to be a bit of a doozy, but I'm going to try my best. You'll see what I mean in a minute. So as the film opens, there's a little girl sitting in the back seat of the car, and the car is being driven by her dad. They're driving along on a sunny day in rural France, and the girl is sitting in the back seat behind her father, and she's quite bored, and she starts kicking his seat, just trying to get his attention, just being a surly little kid fucking about. He loses his temper, tells her to stop it, and they have a car crash. They both survive, but the little girl is quite badly injured around back of her head, the right side of her head towards the back, and is quite badly cut up. She's raced to hospital, and the surgeons, they operate on her, and they fit her head with titanium plates. And upon leaving the hospital, the kid is just very indifferent towards her parents, and she goes over and basically hugs their car, in this very, very sort of amorous, adoring way, as if it was a relative that she loves a lot and hasn't seen for a very long time. She just goes up to the car and just sort of embraces it in this kind of sensual way. Then we cut to many, many years later, where this little girl is now in her sort of late teens, early 20s. Her name is Alexia, and she has blonde hair that she often wears up with a hairpin, but you can visibly see the quite gnarly scar on the back of her head. And Alexia still, she lives with her parents, and she works as, With when you have motor shows, she's one of the show girls at those,
Oh, Booth Babe.
yeah, like,
So
very
scantily clad.
yeah, very, like dancing on and around the car in a very, very sort of salacious manner, shall we say, in scantily clad and being cheered on by sort of braying, champagne drinking mobs. And yeah, she's in that line of work, and she's got a whole host of fans, and many of whom always pester her for her autograph after a show is done. Well, we're shown what Alexia does for a living. Puts on a rather spectacular, deeply provocative display, but that's just, that's just what the job calls for, apparently.
They are gradually being phased out, I think.
Yeah.
The Booth Babes.
Yeah, well, it's woman's choice, I think. If they want to do that, they should be allowed to.
Sure.
There we go. And Alexia, even though she seems very good at her job, the opening sequence where she goes and embraces the car is very telling, because it seems it's implied, at least, that her accident seems to have just left her with no emotional connection or empathy to people whatsoever. She's not, most of the time, she's very withdrawn and sullen and quite hostile and rude. Just displays no interest in getting to know people. One of her co-workers, who is actually played by, oh, fucking hell, what's her name? I think it's Camille something. She's actually, the co-worker is actually played by the young lady who played the lead in Raw.
Oh, okay.
And she tries to interact with Alexia, and Alexia just basically displays no interest whatsoever, no warmth at all. One night after one of these shows, a fan, a rather obsessive and creepy fan, he asks Alexia for her autograph and then forcibly kisses her. And she initially reciprocates the kiss, and then she removes her hairpin and stabs him to death with it. And this is the point where we're made privy to the fact that Alexia is a serial killer. And she has murdered several people this way, people of both sexes. It seems that she likes to engage people in tryst-like fashion and then just brutally murder them with this rather long, dangerous hairpin that she keeps her bun up with. And after this, she just sort of goes home and lies around in a sort of ennui between work, in a very sort of lazy, oafish, antisocial fashion. Well, she eventually has to go on the run because her likeness is being spread about on the news. And this is going to basically be the point where I have to this film will be very, very, very easy to get into spoiler territory, and everything from this point onwards will be massive spoiler territory. So I'm going to try and be very careful here. She has to go on the run, which she does in a rather blazing fashion. And her attempt to evade the authorities, it interweaves with the story of Vincent, played by Vincent Lindon, who is a firefighter captain who has been in an extremely bad way for many, many years now, because his son, Adrian, has been missing for a decade. And essentially his life's path and objectives and Alexia's life path and objectives end up coinciding in the middle. And I really can't give away any more than that, because I will be spoiling things that the audience should be experiencing for themselves. But sound more or less?
Yeah. With you.
Well, one thing you're probably wondering is this film absolutely fucking batshit insane? And the answer is yes. This is completely and utterly stark raving mad. Remember when we watched Raw?
Yeah.
A lot of people reckon, and Raw is quite crazy, but Titane just elevates it just by unbelievable orders of magnitude. Also, it's also one thing I actually forgot to mention that takes place near the start of the film. Actually, it's actually a reveal before the other reveals that I mentioned. Alexia also gets pregnant from fucking a car.
Yes, I was wondering whether that was going to come up, because that was in the news article.
And this actually happens earlier in the film than any of the other things I've mentioned, just about. So that's not really a spoiler to say, but that pretty much gives you an idea of what sort of territory we're coming into. It's this kind of really, really transgressive, character study that it does fall in that sort of new French extremity school of like, really, really boundary pushing, gross out French films. But we're also dealing with body horror. We're dealing with sort of quite astonishing character transformations. People, finding potential emotional safety that they didn't think they were capable of in very, very unlikely places. We're talking about people trying to cope with loss and attempting to assuage that loss, even if it's in ways that might delude them. You're talking about, sexual politics, things concerning, more or less things like, gender fluidity. And it all wrapped up in this very mad, very violent, and kind of borderline pornographic existential woe tale. But I just think that the way that it packages all of that is really, really astonishing. I mean, what is it? The director of photography, I think his name's Ruben Impen or Impenez. It's a really sumptuous looking film. It's like similar to Raw, but just this has a really, really immersive visual quality that takes you in like right from the get-go. The opening scene of Alexia's motorsport show, it just really, really sucks you in a very satisfyingly confrontational way. And her interactions from that point forward, everything's just in very close quarters, and it really, really brims with this anxiety and uncertainty, and it just really makes you feel that it doesn't really rub your face in it as much. I wouldn't like to use the term "rub your face" for Titane, because I tend to use that descriptor for films that I think are shallow and of no redemptive value. Whereas, believe it or not, once the climax comes for this movie, I actually ultimately found a lot of it to be quite poignant, which I was not expecting.
Not for a film that's famous for someone getting pregnant by their car.
So basically,
only the French could pull that off.
Effectively a hypersexual serial murderer who gets pregnant from shagging a gear stick, more or less. This film actually covers,
and also poignant and existentialist.
Covers territory that I was nowhere beginning to expect that it would. Makes you care about a character that at the outset you're not expecting to whatsoever. Because as I said, you're dealing with what is, for all intents and purposes, a psychopath, or definitely a psychopathic character. Somebody who most certainly has some sort of serious personality disorder. Embarking on a journey out of necessity, going down paths that they didn't expect to find themselves in and the audience didn't expect to find themselves in. And that journey is simultaneously, it's very interesting, and it's very fraught with tension. But it's also, there's tenderness there. There's this weird tenderness. It does actually end up being, in the most kind of beautifully disgusting way, it ends up being very moving. And Agatha Roussel, who plays Alexia, I really liked her performance. This is her first role. Really liked her performance. Vincent Lindon, he's one of my favourite French actors. Never been disappointed with that guy. He's got this old-fashioned French guy look. He's quite muscly, and he's in his 60s now. He's got that sort of grizzled, atavistic man from another century look about him. And he's always very, very good at playing characters who, just the way the guy looks and the way he carries himself, you know that he's tough. He doesn't have to make a song and dance about it. You know that this is a guy who's been around the block many times, and he's quite seasoned, and he doesn't really suffer fools gladly, but he does have an undercurrent of decency and a willingness to understand in him. And that's all very nicely understated and therefore convincing. I was surprised by Titane in many, many ways. There was a portion of the film where I thought, well, what the fucking hell is this motion picture doing? But by the time it wrapped up, I was basically sat there in a bit of wonderment. It was shocking, and I'm still processing it now, because I think that's the way the film was designed, and processing it now in the best kind of way. What the fuck was that, with the best possible connotations, no negative ones. Yeah, I really, really liked this one. Really, really bold, really, really innovative, very original. Yeah, and don't watch it. I would advise to watch it with a strong stomach. But if you can basically get over those trappings and sort of let it take you on its ride, there is something very weirdly emotionally rewarding about Titane.
Pleased to hear it. It's been on my radar ever since those Cannes articles.
Yeah,
so,
definitely watch it.
Yeah, very much.
Did you like Raw?
I did. Yeah, it was. It was speaking about like a strong stomach. I mean, you need it for Raw as well. But yes, this had all the hallmarks of something very, very intriguing and creative. And I'm pleased to hear that it's.
So like you
pulled it off.
Absolutely. Well, if you've seen Raw, you know that Ducournau is not exactly one to relent from subject matter. So if you're in the mood for that, with something even more narratively ambitious, this delivers. So yeah, definitely check it out.
Wonderful stuff. Okay then, well that brings me on to TV of the week. And this week, it's a murder mystery.
I love murder mysteries.
Yeah, I mean, I said at the start of this episode, this is a very Halloween-focused episode. I mean, you've done a film with literally Halloween in the title. And then one about a woman who gets pregnant by a car. So I think we've fulfilled the remit. This is murder mystery rather than scary. I suppose it sort of fits with the Halloween thing, I guess. I suppose.
Is it dark and fucked up?
Well, I'll get on to that anyway. Let me do Only Murders in the Building. Heard of this one?
Only Murders in the Building?
Yes.
That's a very, very curious title there.
Yes, it's billed as a mystery comedy. And created by Steve Martin and John Hoffman.
Not the Steve Martin.
The Steve Martin, indeed. Yes, The Jerk, Only Gentlemen Wear Plaid, etc., etc.
You should have just said The Jerk and just left it there and seen if people just got it. No, that era Steve Martin is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. Yes, and then he later went on to do Cheaper by the Dozen and some stuff that perhaps...
Bringing down the house. Yes.
But this premiered on Hulu on August the 31st. There are 10 episodes. They're all about half an hour each. And, I'll set up the plot as thus. So we have a bit of a cold open on this one where it sort of introduces the characters later in the plot. And this comes around later, as these murder mystery kind of things have a tendency to do. We first find our two male characters, Charles Hayden Savage, played by Steve Martin, and Oliver Putnam, played by Martin Short. And they are running down a staircase in an absolute frenzy and a panic. They burst through a door and they find our third main character, Mabel, played by Selena Gomez. And she is kneeling on the floor in front of a dead body with blood dripping down the front of her shirt. And she looks up at them and says, "It's not what it looks like." And we get our cut to credits. And after the credits, we see our three characters making their way through New York, where they very much live. Charles Hayden Savage, Steve Martin, is a failed actor. I mean, I say failed. He had one big role as a 1990s detective drama TV series lead, in which he played a character called Brazos. And as he's wandering around New York, he's still recognized to this day as being this fictional, kind of cheesy TV detective. And people want their selfie taken with him, etc., etc. Oliver, again played by Martin Short, he's a theatre director who is a bit on the wane as well in terms of his career. He's quite flamboyant. He wears a 3/4 length purple coat. And he's sort of marching around being egotistical and a bit sort of away with the fairies. And we have Mabel, who is in her 20s and she wears like a big fur coat and always has her headphones on, dark sunglasses, very much too cool for school and not very interested in everything around her. And the thing that links them is they all live in a high-rise, upscale Manhattan apartment building called the Arconia. And they all get back to the lobby, not knowing each other from Adam. They get into a lift at the Arconia. They're standing there. Oliver knows Charles for the fact that he's seen him around the building before. He knows he was an actor in sort of an old detective drama. Doesn't know much about Mabel, and they're making sort of small talk in the elevator as it goes up to their respective floors. And they notice a young man get into the elevator with them who's very, very sharply dressed, very slick, very Wall Street looking dude. And he's got a garbage bag in his hands. And he's on the phone and he's very aggravated with whoever he's speaking to on the other end about a parcel that was supposed to have been delivered to him and has failed to show up. And he's speaking to the person at the other end going, look, this isn't the first time this has happened. I really, really need this parcel. Please sort it out on your end. And he gets off at his floor. So now our three characters go back to their respective apartments. And as they're going about their daily business, we learn that they share something else in common other than living in the same building. They all listen to the same podcast. Now, this is a true crime podcast called All Is Not Okay in Oklahoma. And it's a classic true crime, real life murder story, very smooth, sugary delivery, the kind of stuff we don't do.
Yes.
It's one of those. And they are all individually in their own apartments obsessed with this true crime mystery that's unfolding in front of them. Particularly Charles, who has made his very own sort of maniac map with strings connected and post-it notes and things as he's tracking down this true crime case. He's putting together the clues and having a good time with it, as apparently people do with true crime stuff. All of a sudden, the fire alarm goes off in the building and all of the residents gather outside. Charles is very, very annoyed that his podcast has been interrupted, and he's taken his maniac map, his list of all the moving pieces in this true crime tale with him. And he decides to go to a restaurant opposite the building. And as he's sitting in the restaurant, he unfurls all his notes and all his bits and pieces. And Oliver comes in and notices that he's working on the very same podcast that he's listening to. So he invites himself to the table, sits down, and they begin to discuss the case. While they're in there having a good time and having a few drinks and getting to know each other over this shared interest, Mabel walks in and she can't find a table. So Oliver, being the big bright character that he is, immediately grabs her, drags them over to the table, and she goes, oh my God, I'm following this podcast as well. So they sit, they have a lovely evening, they eat dinner. They're waiting for everything to calm down outside and see whether they can go back into the building. And after they've finished, they walk out the front and they meet Lester, the security guard. And they say, look, what's going on? Like, the building's very obviously not on fire. Why can't we go back in? He says, oh, sorry, guys, you can't go back in because a dead body has been discovered upstairs. So the three of them look sideways at each other. Oh my God, there might be an actual murder mystery going on in the very building where we live. So they sneak in through a service elevator at the back and they go up to the floor where the police officers and the incident has taken place. They sneak their way along the corridor. They look through a window and they see said dead body lying on the floor with the side of his head blown open. And it is the slick-suited Wall Street-type businessman that they were in the elevator with earlier, sprawled dead on the floor. They are noticed by the chief police officer leading the investigation. And she tells them that you can't be up here. You can't be, all residents should be out of the building. It's an open and shut case anyway. The guy very obviously committed suicide. As they're leaving, they all look to each other and realize that the guy they saw in the elevator earlier certainly didn't look like the kind of person that would commit suicide. He was very desperate to receive a package. He was taking out his garbage. There didn't seem to be anything that would suggest he would suddenly take his own life. Very obviously, he must have been murdered. Very obviously, they are sitting on top of quite possibly the true crime case of the century. And so they decide to begin their own investigations and start a podcast of their very own. There's an initial suggestion that maybe they should start doing multiple true crime cases, but Oliver very succinctly points out that it would be better if they all stuck to one case. They only investigate murders in the building. And there is your link to the title. All up to date with that one? All okay with that?
Yeah, it's pretty easy to follow.
Pretty straightforward, right? Yeah. So what we have here is, it's billed as a mystery comedy. I would go further and categorize it down to a murder mystery comedy. And we've also got that sort of very millennial, very current zeitgeisty thing that there's a podcast element involved as well. And true crime obsessives, true crime aficionados is a really, really big deal these days. These guys think that they're actually going to find something that the police have missed. They're going to go over the case and that there's going to be more layers underneath it. So it's quite a zingy, snappy kind of setup, I would say. And for the most part, it succeeds. I mean, the strength of this show lies in the characterization, which is very, very well done indeed. I mean, the star of the show here really is Martin Short as Oliver Putnam. I said he was an ex-theatre director. I said he was quite flamboyant. It would be very, very easy to overdo that character. What helps here is not just Martin Short's performance, where he does do the flamboyant thing, but he keeps it in a way that's got quite a lot of heart and reasoning. He's very much the comedy foil, but he's also got quite a bit of depth going on there. The writing helps out that character quite early on by giving him a fair bit of backstory. as you would imagine, these three miscreants, these three people that have stumbled across this case that they're completely ill-equipped to deal with. Not only does that lend itself to a lot of comedy, but it also lends the piece the ability to go into their personal lives, how they might be involved, secrets within their past. There's some nice little character quirks and red herrings thrown in early on, which you have to distinguish between, is it a red herring or is it something that's really going to matter later in the plot? Charles keeps making vegetable frittatas in his apartment. He makes a beautiful looking, veggie omelette kind of thing, and then immediately throws it away. And he does it repeatedly over and over again. Oliver is revealed to have financial troubles and a troubled relationship with his son that he only sees occasionally. Mabel is living in an apartment that actually isn't hers, it's her aunt's, and she's just supposed to be there renovating it. But she actually grew up around the building because she spent a lot of time with her aunt. So you've got all these little threads starting to come in the way good layered writing starts to do. We've also got Nathan Lane as Teddy Demas. Now, he's used to fund a lot of Oliver's theatre projects until Oliver had a disastrous moment and lost him a lot of his money. And he is now the king of a deli empire. He makes sandwiches, essentially, but en masse for the denizens of New York. Are you familiar with Nathan Lane?
Yeah, Nathan Lane, he's great. Like fucking, was it Mouse Hunt, the Birdcage?
Yeah. He is a wonderful, wonderful actor. I always love it when he turns up in something. He has a tendency, he does a huge amount of stage and musical work and that kind of stuff, but whenever he crops up in one of these shows, he's always very, very good. He's got a lot to work with here as well. I mean, it's a comedy, so obviously his comedy chops are put to good use, but he's also got quite a fair bit of darkness and seriousness to his character as well. It's wonderful to see him take on that sort of role. He's one of those actors that I could watch him read the phone book. I could watch him take a shower. That sounds creepy. But you know what I mean? He's wonderfully, wonderfully talented.
He's very good.
And they make good use of him here. In fact, all of the performances here are really good. Selena Gomez as well. She is very much the straight woman of the three. And, in a triumvirate of characters in a comedy piece, at least one person has to be the straight guy or gal. And although she doesn't have particularly funny lines in it, she is a very, very good foil to the mad cappery, if you like, as you would expect from Steve Martin and Martin Short, having fun with dialogue. It's snappy and it's quite funny as well. It's sort of a warm, nice, understated kind of humor, which I appreciate. It doesn't go too gag heavy. When the gags come, they really do land nicely. So top marks there. That's not to say it's entirely ointment without fly. I watch a lot of murder mysteries and I was really excited initially by this one because although it was leaning on gags and characterization and things like that, and I was impressed with it, I was also working on the murder mystery constantly, which these shows often invite you to do. And I was looking out for red herrings and things in the background that might be important. At one point, there was a bit of text on a wall that I thought that has to be an anagram. I was sitting there. I even got a notepad out at one point because that's the kind of obsessive person I am, going, that has to be a clue for something. Actually, the way it plays out, I found was maybe a little bit conventional. It's fine, but it's predictable in a way I was expecting the show not to be. Given that the writing was so clever in regards to dialogue, witty banter, and a warmth of characterization. It's so good at that. I expected the mystery to be a little bit more convoluted and harder to spot than it eventually was. It wraps up in a kind of way that makes you go, oh, okay, fair enough, rather than, oh my God, I never saw that coming. Which I think if you're going to go down this route, maybe the writing should have been a little bit more focused on making the mystery as clever as possible rather than the characters as warm as possible. Although overall, I would say the show is good despite it. It also attempts a double sting at the ending. So you get a reveal, and then right at the last minute when you think everything's over, you get another reveal. The second reveal, the very last sting, I thought was unnecessary. It sets up season 2 very nicely, but it wasn't particularly clever, and I just kind of went, oh, okay, so there's your setup for season 2. I want a season 2. I think the show's very good. But again, I just feel like the writing could have been a little bit better. However, I don't want to get too down on this piece. It's got some wonderful qualities to it. Like I said, warm characters that are well-rounded and well-developed, great performances, lovely bits of absurdist humor. Steve Martin gets to do some physical comedy as well, which is wonderful to see him do that again. And he's got such a talent for it. Particularly the last episode actually had me in stitches through his performance. He just plays that so beautifully well, though obviously I can't go into how. But it is nice to see Steve Martin really kicking it again. Martin Short is the standout star. He's always been brilliant in just about everything. There are no bad performances, really, but my only critique is I would have expected the mystery to be a little bit cleverer than that. But it's a nice ride. It's a nice watch. Just don't go expecting, don't get your notepad out like I did.
The Chestnut Man played for laughs.
Yeah, well, the Chestnut Man had a really good twist that you can't really see coming, and this is more of okay. Well, I had all these theories going, but it's one I discounted because I thought it was maybe a little bit obvious, and that ends up being the one. That could just be me. That could be me being pernickety, but otherwise, it's got heart, and it's got good writing, it's got good characterization. So yeah, overall, a good piece of work. Just don't go in expecting too much from the mystery element, I would say.
Oh, it sounds kind of fun.
Yeah, it's a nice time. It's a warm hug of a show. And yeah, it's nicely written, and I'm looking forward to season 2. Although the way they got there, yeah, I would have sent that back to the writer's room and gone, yeah, we can do something a little bit more intelligent than this. But yeah, otherwise, it's a funny ride, and I like funny rides. So there you go.
Cool.
Okay then. Well, to tie everything back to Halloween, I've done some horror movie trivia. Now, of course, we've done horror movie trivia before. In fact, I think we've done it a couple of times. I was very careful to go back over my notes because I keep everything we ever write to make sure that we're not repeating ourselves here. So this is all new horror movie trivia because I think this is our 3rd Halloween that we've done since we started the podcast.
I believe it must be, yeah.
Yeah, very, very anxious not to repeat ourselves. So here's some Halloween movie trivia to finish off our Halloween show. First one here. Before the independent horror film Paranormal Activity was released in theaters, Paramount tossed around the idea of remaking it with well-known stars, but it was the suggestion of Steven Spielberg that swayed them to keep it as is. The story goes that the famed director had screened a copy of the film one night, but was so terrified that he had to pause the movie and finish watching it during the day. He persuaded the studio to release the film as it was because the unknown actors added to the believability of the film. As it turns out, he was right. Paranormal Activity spawned 5 sequels, and it's now one of the highest grossing horror franchises in history.
Listen to Uncle Stephen.
Yes, absolutely. The first one as well is, the others, I thought the sequels really, really overdid it. But the first one did really, really put the shits up me, so to speak.
It's pretty fucked up. It's like, even though the Poughkeepsie tapes that I mentioned on the premium isn't paranormal, it's like one of those, Paranormal Activity is one of those found footage films where, you do get the persistent willies, it pervades throughout, whereas, yes, the sequels are no.
Emily Perkins, who played the young Beverly Marsh in It, the Tim Curry version of It, says Tim Curry, whose portrayal of Pennywise terrified television audiences in the original It miniseries, didn't break character in between takes. Tim would sit in his chair, chain-smoking in his makeup. Whenever the kid actors got too close, he would grin at us with his horribly pointed teeth, Marsh told Yahoo. He really tried to intimidate us because he wanted the fear to be real in our performances. He didn't make any effort to be nice, at least not to me. That's got to be... Yeah. I mean, ordinarily when you've got kids on a horror movie set, you try and downplay it all and go, oh, it's just for fun. Whereas Tim Curry just went, fuck it. Let's scare the shit out of these little bastards.
That's the reason he's Tim Curry, isn't it?
Sounds like him, doesn't it?
No fucks given.
New Line Cinema is sometimes called the house that Freddy built because they were on the verge of bankruptcy before the success of A Nightmare on Elm Street.
The house that Freddy built, I like that.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because New Line Cinema is just known as one of those huge names. As soon as you see that pre-title sting come up, you go, oh yeah, it's known for being one of those huge producers, distributors, etc., etc. But yeah, apparently, if it wasn't for A Nightmare on Elm Street, we would not know of them today.
Holy shit.
Little quick one here. Final Destination is based on an idea for an episode of The X-Files that was never made.
I would have been more interested in seeing Mulder and Scully looking into, a vengeful death.
I think that's really interesting.
Rather than the Final Destination films themselves.
Yeah, I mean, The X-Files was quite scary at points, wasn't it? Or
yeah, even though
maybe it was the age I watched it at. I'd probably go back and look at it now.
I've rewatched some of it over the years, and even though some of it is arguably dated by now, there are still many aspects of The X-Files that are still creepy as shit. They really are just, very unnerving. There's still some episodes that are they really, really like kind of make their hairs in the back of your neck stand up.
Mm.
So yeah, I would have been. I wish they had gone through with that, for crying out loud.
I've got an It fact here, the 2017 version. With a box office intake of over $700 million, the $35 million Stephen King adaptation is the highest grossing horror movie in history. Combined with It Chapter 2's $437 million box office tally, the It saga is one of only a few horror franchises to cross the coveted $1 billion mark.
Jesus Christ.
I thought they were good films.
I didn't know it grossed that much.
Yeah, between the two, over $1 billion.
I've noticed a lot of people shitting on the second chapter, but I liked them both equally.
I thought the second was in some ways scarier than the first.
Oh yeah, well, like we know with the whole I loved the whole Paul Bunyan sequence.
Yeah.
That was I noticed so many people crapping on It Chapter 2. I thought I like them both. I like the way they both fit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. In 1909, Key West painter and author Robert Eugene Otto claimed that one of his family's servants placed a voodoo curse on his childhood toy, Robert the Doll. Supposedly, the doll would mysteriously move from room to room, knock furniture over, and conduct conversations with Otto. Robert the Doll was left in the attic until Otto's death in 1974, when new owners moved into his Florida home. The new family also claimed mysterious activities would happen in the house connected to the doll. Today, Robert the Doll is on display at the Custom House and Old Post Office in Key West, Florida. This was supposedly the inspiration for the original Child's Play.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that.
Scary voodoo-influenced doll.
I know that Child's Play was particularly controversial over here, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
So I remember when I was a kid, and I actually remember watching it once when I was a kid, and my granddad was just like, "You shouldn't be watching that. They're trying to ban that because it's giving the kiddies nightmares and all that." It's like, yeah, I suppose so.
Anyway, give me a beer.
Yeah, told you I'm screwed up for a reason.
And my last one here. Shortly after the found footage indie film, The Blair Witch Project, turned into a smashing success, raking in nearly $250 million at the box office in the summer of 1999, the film's star, Heather Donahue, was sitting underneath a giant Los Angeles billboard of her face, wondering how she was going to pay her bills. As Donahue later recounted in a personal essay, she was only paid a very small amount for filming. She said she was the poorest new famous person in America. However, once the movie opened big, she anticipated a nice piece of the profit. But no, they sent her a fruit basket instead.
Well, isn't that generous?
I mean, $250 million take, budget production, you're the star. It does incredibly well, and you get sent a fruit basket.
Hang on a minute. Did you say there were no contracts?
Well, I imagine she had a contract for a tiny fee that she was paid. And no residuals. So there you go. From this point forward, I imagine she's lawyered up on future productions.
Yeah, I bloody well hope so.
Completely and utterly screwed. Yeah, that's Hollywood in a nutshell, isn't it?
Yep. Well, completely and utterly screwed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely fruit basket. Have a nice day. See you for the sequel. Maybe not. Anyway, yes, that's the end of our free episode this week. Thank you so much for listening. Liam's going on his holidays for a couple of weeks.
I am indeed.
So we're going to put a pause on the free podcast until he gets back. For our premium subscribers, we are going to record a couple of premium episodes in advance and release them on our usual schedule. So we'll obviously keep to our contract of 4 premium podcasts a month for our paying customers.
Yes, indeed.
But for the free one, you'll have to wait. Sorry about that, but we've got a huge amount of content if you'd like to visit our Patreon page. Speaking of which, if you go to cinementalist.com, there is a link. We do premium podcasts, 4 of them every month, where we go a lot wider. We discuss older films. This week, we're actually going to have a bit of a monster movie special, given the time of year. We're going to be discussing all of our favorite horror movie monsters. I've initially got them set up as like vampires, werewolves, etc., but I'm sure we'll go free ranging with it.
I've just written loads of shit down. So. Let's throw it at a wall and hope it sticks.
Yeah, we do lots of sort of director specials, actor specials. We do lots of extra reviews as well that don't fit into the free podcast. But this week, yes, we're going to be leaning well into the deep, dark, and scary. So if you'd like to join us for that, as we said, please check out cinementalist.com. You can follow us on Twitter at Cinementalcast, and you can follow Liam at...
I'm Liam at the movies at Wacko Jacko's Flicks.
Lovely. Anything to add? Any Halloween cheer? I mean, it's over for our audience, but you know.
Is Halloween cheery?
Is it? Oh, yeah, I guess.
Well, guys, by the time you're listening to this, obviously Halloween has gone past. So if you're attending any Halloween parties, please get shit-faced. watch the films that we mentioned or the shows that we mentioned, you know, then just, keep on having a good time out there, you bastards.
Happy fucking Halloween. All right, cheers very much, guys. Won't see you next week for the free one, but premium subscribers, we will see you in the next episode. Take it easy.